Hello James Cope, I'm Olivier de Bree, the director of The Gaze, and I invite you to watch our film The Gaze because I think it's a film that a lot of people can relate to and find something in that they can recognize themselves in. I'm happy you're asking this because for a very long time the movie had a very different title. It was called The Midwife's Apartment, but I decided that that didn't cover the whole film, it only covered a part. So I decided when I changed the title, it was very late in the process, and that was really like the moment that I felt, okay, now the film is finished and it makes sense, because the title is of course very important in how you look at a film. If you know the title, you have a certain idea before you go and watch the film, and that's why it was good to change it. So no, it was not the same title the whole time. Yeah, it's true. A long time ago, I'm 36 now. When I was 20, I studied photography in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and I worked as a photographer for a little bit, and then I became more interested in film. I made my first film in 2016. That was like a mid-length film. It was like almost 50 minutes. And before making this short film that I'm showing here in Moscow, I made a feature film, which was quite long, 110 minutes, about Dutch colonial history. And this is my first film in German, and living in Germany, I wanted to, of course, produce films in German. So this short film is my first German film. That's a feature film I made before. In 2019 it was finished. Yeah, you should. I'm only happy if people want to watch my film here, and also my previous films, of course. The title of the film is Pinks. It's basically talking about Dutch colonial history, but it's happening in the future. So it's also about climate change, because it's filmed in Suriname, which is a country in South America. I don't know if you ever heard of the country. It's very small. In Holland, everybody knows Suriname because it is a former Dutch colony, and there's a lot of people from Suriname living in the Netherlands and the other way around. But the story in my film, in Pinks, it's set in the Netherlands of the future. And that's why it looks tropical and very hot and warm because of climate change. I imagine that Holland will look like Suriname today. That's why it's filmed there. Well, to be honest, I only started making films since I live in Germany. So I haven't tried making films living in the Netherlands. So I wouldn't be able to judge that completely. I just think that it's quite logic that German, the language, is a lot spoken by a lot more people than Dutch, of course. Dutch Holland is a small country with a lot of people, but it's still, there's a lot more people speaking German, so it makes more sense for me to produce films in German because you can reach a bigger audience. Well, I think there's a lot of different themes I try to put into the film. I think there's a lot of universal themes that I hope that a lot of an audience worldwide can relate to, but my main purpose was to portray Klaus, which is the main character, who's a pretty lonely figure. He's spending his holidays in an Airbnb apartment in the big city, and he lives very isolated he doesn't really have a social life. He's only looking at his phone the whole day. He has a camcorder that he uses to look at his neighbors on the other side of the street. He has a computer and a television in the background. He's surrounded by screens, but it's a very lonely man. And I kind of was interested in making this tragic portrait of a person who actually is living a very comfortable life. If you look at it, not knowing much about him, but he's not happy. He's very focused on his own problems and his loneliness, and that was my main motivation for this story. It's a very good question, and I have to say, as a filmmaker, I see it more as my role to raise questions and make people aware of problems like this. I'm not trying to tell people like this is what you should do or this is the solution. I find it hard to come up with a good solution, but I think the first step to finding a solution is to show what the problem looks like. So that would be my answer to that. I think you're very right. You cannot go back in time and get rid of all the gadgets, but we have to find a way to live with it, and I think that's possible, but it's hard. Yes, I'm here together with Elinor Förster. She's the set designer of the film. So we worked together on this project from a very early stage, because actually the set design is, of course, it's always an important part of filmmaking, but in this film I really tried to mix existing locations and also existing in terms of the way they looked already before we as a crew came there, and of course we made changes to make it fit the film more, but we also used a lot of the objects that were already in a room, for instance, and Ellie had a big role in that. We did that together, but that's what I wanted to say about the set design. Well, Jacob is his name. He is somebody who I got in touch with through a friend of a friend, because you know this, of course, this short film, it's a small production. We worked with a small budget and a small team. So I was when I was looking for actors, I first looked around me, like what people do I know who know people who can act, and when I first saw Jacob, I was very happy because of course he has a very distinct way of looking at. He has what I found important for this role. I think that's good to say, is that it is because Klaus, the character in the film, is a bit of a strange person. So on the one hand side, I wanted to show his strange behavior, but at the other hand side, I also wanted him to not look too much like a strange person, so we can still relate to him. You know, like and I think he has a really good face for that. Like he's somebody who I think a lot of people, I hope, can identify with, because he's also has an approachable way of looking, but at the same time, it was about the balance between it's a bit of a strange person, but I still need to connect to him. Oh, definitely, yes. No, I think I'm pretty sure that this is a global problem. That's also why yesterday when me and Ellie went to the first part of the short film competition, I was actually really happily surprised to see that there were a lot of films that are also dealing with similar topics as in our film, The Gays. Films from China, from India, like countries that are far away from Germany and from Russia, but still we are all dealing with similar problems, and that is very interesting to see. And it doesn't necessarily make me happy, because it means that it's a problem that's a problem everywhere, so that's not a good thing, but it's good to see that we're all looking for ways to handle that. There were of course a lot of challenges. Financial challenges are always there. What I shortly already said in as an answer to your question about the set design, I think that's a big part of it too. We used a lot of existing places, so we didn't have to completely redecorate a whole space. That is of course also helpful in terms of that it's a bit more economic to work like that. But I don't see that as a limitation. I saw it more as a chance to, because of some financial limitations, we had the opportunity to also involve more things that are there to make it a bit more, to bring a little bit more of real life into this fictional film. Because of course it's a fictional story, but there's a lot of real life elements in it. He's a very lonely person, but that doesn't mean that he's not interested in people. He is interested in people, he just finds it very hard to deal with people in a direct way in real life. So for him, a way to still observe people and get in touch with people, even though it's only one-sided, is through his camcorder, which has an extreme zoom function. He can really zoom like very far and see people from very close, even though those people themselves have no idea. But that's kind of, it's a bit sad of course, but for him it's like through a screen he's close to people, but he always has the screen in between him and the real world, so to say. To be honest, I don't have that much experience with a short film, getting short films funded, because like I told you before, this is my first short film, and since before this film I made a feature film in Dutch, and before I wanted to apply for German funding, which of course is there's a lot of possibilities. The German government also has programs where you can try to get your project funded. That exists, but I thought I have a bigger chance before I try that if I first have made a film in German and say, this is what I've done before, would you like to help me finance my future project? So this project I finance myself, and my next step is to write a proposal to try to get my project funded in Germany. Well, first of all, thanks for the compliments. That's nice to hear, of course. I actually have plans for 2 or 3 future projects, which I don't know yet if they will be short or feature films. Of course, it's always nicer if you have the opportunity to work on a longer film, because the more time you have to tell a story, the more things you can try out. But that doesn't mean that I would love to make more short films as well. And actually, I first had the idea to kind of make this film that we're showing here in Moscow, The Gays, part one of kind of like a mini trilogy, as I call it. So there's going to be maybe a part 2 and 3, where theme-wise they're all fitting together, but they're still also talking about different subjects. I think one of the things I would like to make a film about is, for instance, about a young family, like a couple with a kid, who instead of having a normal lazy holidays at the beach, they want to do something a bit more useful and active, and they want to go to a country where it's really warm, like in a desert. That's how I imagine, to kind of prepare themselves for the near future, where climate change will be even more extreme than now, and the conditions will worsen so much that it will get so much more hot, that they want to prepare themselves. How do we live in a situation like that? So they're actually booking a holiday package where they're being trained and prepared how to deal with extreme heat. And it's kind of like a boot camp, I would say. So that's one of the ideas of future films.